Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. This week is a bit of a breather. It doesn't feel quite as anxious, if that makes sense. We start off with a lot of sextiles. Sextiles are when you have a sign in between another sign. Those two signs and whatever planets are in them that are kind of speaking over that other sign, that's a sextile. So they tend to be more conversational. They're not as confronting as a square. They're not as kind of, I'll say overwhelming because not all trines are overwhelming, but they're not quite as free flowing as a trine. It's it's a supportive, helpful moment. It's kind of the place where even if the planets have really different qualities and the signs have really different qualities, it's that kind of meeting place where they can like discuss and come together. And it can be really helpful. I often find a really great trait in friendship charts are a lot of sextiles. And also, even in like romantic relationships, it means that you have the ability to navigate and converse and work through things as a person. It's also great for parent charts. If you're a parent, having a lot of sextiles with your child allows you to really understand your kiddo and work with them. But getting off my synastry kick, we start off with Mercury sextile Jupiter. And while Jupiter is still going to be in, Gemini for a hot second, we are in, the third decan finally. We are at 21 degrees. We're going to continue to move closer and closer to Cancer, which I think all of us are looking forward to. Nothing against Jupiter and Gemini, but it is a very kind of trickster, silly, goofy, unexpected Jupiter. And so getting a Jupiter that's a little more benefic feels nice. But like I said, that's not going to happen quite yet. But this is a conversation between, Aries and Gemini, essentially. And Mercury and Aries and Jupiter and Gemini, there is a bit of repartee. It can also be a little bit harsh because these are signs that, don't mince their words. Although Geminis can be silver tongued, they are intentionally so. Same with an Aries Mercury as someone who has one. It's a choice to be a mediator or someone who works things out. It's not really a natural state of being. So this is a moment to really kind of discuss what you want and what you've learned and to make plans for action going forward, but plans that don't really fit in the scope of the norm. This is not the time to be like, I'm setting up a retirement fund as the empire burns. It's a time to really ask yourself what you want and what you need and how you can communicate that as a means to getting what you want and what you need. It's a great time to express your needs. It's a great time to take steps towards things that you need and want. Um, so this Monday, definitely let yourself um, really go in and really review what's been going on and what the retrogrades have taught you, especially with Mercury officially out of that shadow air period. Um, and really sink in and ask the important things, but also be silly and brash and fun because that's what these signs do best oftentimes. Then we have Venus sextile Pluto, and this is something we've had already because we had the Venus retrograde. So we're kind of revisiting these Venus Pluto moments. Venus Pluto interactions are interesting because if we see them in a chart, unfortunately, it can be like really toxic relationship dynamics and not always. I don't find it so much in trines and squares, but in conjunctions. Thankfully, this is not a conjunction. You can see obsession and control creeping in. And with the sextile, I think it's about asking where we have agency, especially with Venus and Aries, asking where we get to do what we want to do in the context of history and society and the relationships that might feel ancient, especially for past life work. This is a really good one for kind of working out those entanglements with souls that just aren't quite progressing and looking in and asking ourselves, is this worth it for me? And obviously this is if you are someone interested in past life stuff, but it is an interesting aspect of this to really have a conversation with yourself and others about the dynamics and the power structures and the weight that might be existing in current relationships. Doesn't have to be romantic, although this does often manifest in romantic relationships just because of the closeness of them. but it's also parent-child dynamics, friendships, are you getting what you need? Are you being cared for? Um, you can also kind of take this as like the Hades Persephone story, which has been seen through many lenses. This is a more conversational one. No one's being dragged off. No one's living in the underworld per se. Venus is dancing barefoot in the weeds. And, Pluto is kind of in a very perspective sign. So take a moment to, we've got so much going on. We've got this Mercury Jupiter moment, and then we have this Venus Pluto sextile. But it's a great day to ask yourself what you want, and also to ask yourself what you're willing to sacrifice to get what you want. Um, None of these placements, because two of them are in detriment, are going to give you what you want just off the bat. It's really about self activation and fighting for your needs and stating what you want and standing on it in this sextile. And like I said, it's not so much a fight as it is a conversation, but you do have to say, this is what I want. And this is what I need. It's good time to do that on Monday and the days surrounding Monday. Then we move into Tuesday. We have Uranus sextile the North Node. This is the only time that's going to happen. It also is trine the South Node. We have a sextile, we have trine. So there is this feedback of conversation with progress, and then this free flowing energy with bonds and things we have to work through and knots that have to be undone. I don't like seeing the South Node as like an evil place or a bad place, but it is a place of intense amounts of kind of um, impacted energy. It's a place where things have to be shifted and moved around in order to be worked with, whereas the North Node is just a massive kind of like projection of, depending on what sign, just glorious amounts of energy, whereas the South Node is like everything impacted is there, and you have to kind of dig through it and work through it and untangle it. And Uranus is really helpful about that. Now, maybe is a bit of a bull in the China shop, especially in Taurus, but really getting into, and it really feels like this is kind of this whole week, really getting into wants and desires and what needs to change in order for us to get what we want. And the partner aspect to this week is, and some people don't consider it an aspect, whatever, Mercury conjunct Chiron. And I know not everyone works with Chiron, but Chiron is very triggered in my chart. So I always talk about Chiron. But this is about expressing our pain and expressing our limitations and expressing our need for change based on past painful experiences. It's also about recognizing where we are triggered and how those triggers are deeply affecting us and maybe causing harm to our mental health or making us less able to fully self actualize and enjoy our life and have fun. It feels like the whole beginning of this week is really about discussing the need for change and accepting where things are not optimal and recognizing where we are hurting and where we are struggling. And instead of coming at it like, as someone who needs to be fixed and changed and done all at once, but approaching it as, how can we solve this? How can we work with what we have in order to get to where we need to be? And, Uranus in that trine to the South Node is about, going in and tearing some things up, dealing with some past trauma. I think especially trauma when it comes to past lives, it's going to be really highlighted here. So take that time this week if you can. Like I said, it doesn't feel as forced or as pressured as some past weeks. It feels like there is more space for this. So take that time to really sit with and take stock of everything you've learned in the retrogrades. We are officially on the other side of, we're going to be on the other side of the degrees that Mars was retrograde. Excuse me. Mars was retrograde. We aren't quite there, but we're getting closer and closer. I think by the end of this week, we'll be 4 degrees away from where Venus stationed retrograde, so we'll be out of it next week. We're coming to the end of kind of the impact of the retrograde stories that we experienced during Aries season. And if you, sorry, something popped up on my phone. And if you count the Venus shadow period, which started at the end of January, pretty much all of 2025 so far has been under a personal planet retrograde. And we're slowly coming out of it. And even when they weren't retrograde, they were in the shadow period. So take this time to really take stock of the retrogrades this week, what you've learned, maybe pull up your chart, see where all these things are happening. And then our final little event is Mercury moving into Taurus. And I think this is nice. It slows some things down. The main thing about Mercury, especially in an earth sign that is not Virgo, so Capricorn and Taurus, is the fact that words really matter. Not that they don't matter in Virgo, but because it's like exalted and domicile, there's a whole different thing going on. But in Mercury and Capricorn, where it really doesn't have any kind of dignity, um, it is really about your words meaning what they mean, being um, I don't want to say this, but like any contracts or agreements and even non-formal ones that you make really have long-lasting impacts. The promises you make under a Mercury in an earth sign will come back to bite you if you don't keep them. It also is the moment to really speak out about your values. If you are not speaking out about your values, what are you doing? And if you haven't yet, you will be pushed to do so with Mercury and Taurus. And yeah, it can be scary and it can be frightening to be bold about what you believe in. I absolutely have not gotten past a very small margin of followers over on IG because I am outspoken. I'm not saying that I would have hordes flocking to me, but I absolutely post a story and have no followers disappear when I talk about things like Gaza and, um, immigration and children's rights and disability rights. And as a Taurus sun in the ninth, you have to do it. And the consequences might seem big, but they are never as big as the consequences for not speaking out. So I encourage you as we go through this cycle, it'll be about 3.5-ish weeks with Mercury in Taurus, moves pretty fast when it's not retrograding, to really think about what you believe and how you portray it and who you talk to. And most importantly, not to guilt yourself if you haven't done it yet. There's no point in guilt, especially in Taurus. There's no point. And I know a lot of Taurus people who do live in guilt. And something that I said to my therapist recently is as someone who was raised in fundamentalist Christianity, guilt is a monster, I know, and I'm not afraid of them. Guilt is so pointless to me. Obviously, if you've done something wrong, you should feel bad, but that should galvanize you to change and to shift and to do better. And when it comes to not knowing how to share stuff, um, which I had this recently with someone who I'd been holding back on sharing a lot of my opinions on, and then I let them have it, like a typical Mercury and Aries, you know, making sure that you do those things and that you don't let guilt or shame get in the way, that you say, you know what, I wasn't able or capable of doing it before, but it doesn't mean that I can't do it today. It doesn't mean that changing my mind is a bad thing. And I think the counterpoint to things that are in Taurus is that struggle with being like, well, I haven't done it differently before, or I missed the point of departure, so now I'm just stuck with whatever decision I made a long time ago. It's just not true. And that's the joy of having a lot of mutable placements and cardinal placements. So you don't have to live in the beliefs that you had yesterday. You don't have to live in the words that you said last month. You get to change them and to make them count in this Taurus cycle that starts on Saturday, where we head in there with Mercury. So be brave, be Taurus, and, you know, bull-like and determined and fearless. Um, Bulls and large animals, although they don't experience fear, it's that oftentimes because of their size, they don't care as much. And you can be afraid, and you can also, I think you can really have bravery without fear, and you can't really have courage without fear. So be brave and be courageous with your words and with your decisions. Also, make sure you tell people you love them with Mercury and Taurus. It's a really sweet place to share your feelings and to have them sink in to the person you want to know about them. So, yeah, this week, take that time to reframe and readjust and to really kind of take stock of where you are at the beginning of the week. And then by the end of the week, when we head into this, Taurus moment and we have our values kind of reperceived and put into perspective, now we get to take that and, use our voice, the things that we learned and we integrated during the Venus retrograde around values. That's really going to come into play with, Mercury and Taurus. So stand on those truths. Believe in yourself. Don't let anyone tell you to keep it to yourself or to shut up or not to shake that boat. Um, if you're not rocking the boat, what are you doing? You could tell I'm feeling my Venus and Aries oats. Anyways, my loves, please like and subscribe if you enjoy any of my content. Um, I wish you all a wonderful week. I hope that you have the space in your life to, really sit with some of this. And like I said, make sure that, especially Saturday and beyond, take the time to tell people how you feel, even if it's not a fun feeling, even if it's a feeling that might make them hurt, that you have it. That's just a part of being human. Anyways, I will see you all in a different space and time, and have fun. And I say have fun as I'm like process trauma, but have fun and enjoy this space that Taurus season is giving us.